Coming to paperback and e-readers everywhere, East-themed horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewoman in this action-packed, all-new East-themed series adventure. Pre-order your copy of East-themed horror of the Hyena Woman on Amazon.com today. One of my readers wanted to know what were my thoughts on comics that featured romance and social interactions as a major part of their stories. Now, this reader grew up reading a lot of Archie comics and comics that were licensed by Archie, such as Sonic the Hedgehog, which primarily focused not on superhero action and adventure, but on social interactions between the characters. Now, I myself have read a lot of Archie comics back when I was a teenager, when I used to pick up Archie Double Digest from the local newsstand at the train station. And I really used to enjoy reading all of those fun Archie comics, and I didn't really have a problem with all of the social plots and subplots or the romance plots and subplots that were presented, because I was really just focused on reading a great story, and that's all that mattered to me at the end of the day. And that's the only reason why I would go out here and pick up any comic, is about the content of the story. I really didn't care too much about what genre it was in. I really just like to see really well done art and really well done stories, and a romance comic or a comic with just human interactions can be very compelling if it's well done. Now, there are superhero comics that focus more on romance and interpersonal relationships, and a lot of those books are extremely popular. I remember back in the late 70s and early 80s, your Chris Claremont and John Byrne weaved a lot of romance and social interaction subplots in between the action and adventure of books like Uncanny X-Men. And that was one of the major reasons why a lot of readers went to go pick up books like Uncanny X-Men, because you got to see another side of those heroes outside of them just taking on the bad guy. So you really got to know them as people, not just as their superhero alter egos, and that was something that made reading X-Men more compelling than some other superhero books. Now, there were other books that also uses a lot of romance and interpersonal interactions, and one of those is Marv Wolfman and George Perez's New Teen Titans. One of the core elements of the Wolfman-Perez era of Teen Titans is the fact that we really get to know the people behind the costumes, and we get to see all of their personal lives. And one of the big subplots of your New Teen Titans was Dick Grayson and Coriander, also known as Starfire's romance, and that was a major plot point for the entire run of the first series, the second series, and the new Titans book. So that storyline of Dick Grayson falling in love with the alien Coriander, that was a major part of that comic, and a lot of people, including myself, loved seeing that romantic interaction between Dick and Corey. Now, we also like seeing the friendship build between Garfield Logan, also known as the Changeling, now known as Beast Boy, and Victor Stone, who is known as Cyborg. That was another big storyline as related to interpersonal relationships that was in one of the subplots of New Teen Titans that really made the book really compelling, seeing Victor Stone building a close relationship with Garfield Logan. And I remember also in reading X-Men, the love triangle between your Scott Summers and the Phoenix and Wolverine. And there were also plot lines where your Colossus and Nightcrawler were becoming close friends. So these kind of interpersonal relationships, they do add to a story, and they add some, again, depth and dimension to the superhero characters who would really need some personality and voice. So this shows us a different side of their life, and it also gives the heroes something to fight for other than the standard mission of just truth and justice. It gives them people to care about. It gives them people to connect with. And that's one of the core things that made books like New Teen Titans and X-Men very popular, was those romances and interpersonal relationships. And I also remember one of the big books that is one of the most popular books, The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man had lots of interpersonal relationships and romance as part of its subplots, whether it be Peter Parker's best friend, Harry Osborn, the son of the Green Goblin, and Peter wanting to have a relationship where he's trying to help out his best friend, Harry Osborn, who is socially awkward, learn how to navigate social situations. Or your Peter Parker was out here trying to go out here and spit some game to either your Gwen Stacy or your Mary Jane Watson. These were major plot points that made Amazing Spider-Man basically a must-read comic for many years. So these social interactions, they show us that there's a person behind the costume, and there's a person we need to care about as related to their adventures, and it also gives us someone they should be fighting for. So it adds some depth and layers and dimension to characters. And in superhero comics, it really brings another aspect of things to life. But in other books like Archie or your Sonic type books, these types of social interactions, they can be used to move the plot forward. And one of the things that I like about those kind of comics is that it, again, shows us people living their lives, and it gives us a snapshot of a picture in time. So that's another thing I like about these comics that feature your romance and your interpersonal relationships, is that it gives us a snapshot in time, and it also gives us a downright compelling story. Now, while the romance genre has struggled in mainstream comics for about the last 40 years, it has really gone on to become one of the stronger genres in the manga business. And in manga, they oftentimes don't just do action and adventure stories. One of the big genres in manga is a lot of these slice of life, or these books with featuring a lot of social interactions. There are lots of manga comics that focus on just kids going to high school, kids going into sports, or a guy going out here looking for a date. The manga genre is filled with all kinds of comics like this, and they continue to sell just as well as the romance comics used to do back from the 1940s to the 1970s. And these comics are ones that people pick up all the time, whether it be a lot of girls who pick up the manga, or it's young men who pick up the manga. People pick these characters' stories up, and they pick them up because they really like these characters, they like their stories, and they like how they want to see how the story progresses and see the story come to a conclusion. So it is all about just going out here and putting together a compelling storyline. And if you put together a compelling storyline, the readers will pick those comics up, whether it went in the romance genre or just a slice of life story, because most comic fans or manga fans just want to see a really well done story. So when I look at these comics, I've been buying them for years. I bought Archie Double Digest from about 1988 to about 1995, and I had a whole box of them, but sadly I had to throw them away because they got damaged. And I used to buy those comics all the time, and sometimes I go out here and I pick up other types of books. Like recently I picked up a book called Clubbing a while back by Josh Howard, and I have no problem picking up these kinds of books, and I would really like to see more of these kinds of comics out here. And I know that there are some companies that have done these these slice of life stories, and I've read some of them, and many of them are very good and exceptionally well done. There's a lot of good quality stories in the slice of life genre. Unfortunately, many comic publishers are afraid to go out here and publish those kinds of books because they fear taking losses like they did
when superheroes became popular in the 60s and the 70s. But before then, the romance genre was very big at one time at Marvel Comics. And I remember reading romance comics by top artists like, I think it was John Bushnell and your John Romita Sr. Yes, there were top artists at one time doing romance comics, and we could possibly see a romance comic done by a top artist, but all it takes is for a publisher to go out here and take that risk. I mean, I myself, if I could, I would have done a Spinsterella comic book or a Recipe for Success comic, but the whole thing is I would need to see an audience for that kind of comic in order to go do that kind of comic. So there are slice of life comics out there, and again, in the manga section, this genre does very well, and people buy mangas based on slice of life or romance all the time, and they have absolutely no problem picking up those comics. So again, I have no problem with the comic as long as it has a well done story. And for me, it doesn't matter about the genre. It's all about the writing, it's all about the art, and it's all about it coming together in a compelling fashion. A good comic is a good comic, and I have no problem going out here and sharing good comics with people, because all I want to do is see good comics get in the hands of readers, because the more comics that get in the hands of readers, the better the industry does. And if somebody would go out here and make a great romance comic, I would have no problem taking a look at it and giving it a review, because those slice of life comics, they are a great break from all of the action and adventure of superheroes, and sometimes you just need a minute to just take a breather and read something different, because it'll give you a different perspective on things, and it will give you a more diversity of thought as related to storytelling. So when it comes down to romance comics and interpersonal relationships and stories, that's something I really like seeing in many comics, because again, this is all part in the superhero book and a regular book of character development, and it helps us get to know the people behind the mask in a superhero comic, and it helps us get to know people and different aspects of life as related to their stories. So romance comics and slice of life comics are some fun comics, and I definitely would like to see more of these kinds of comics at local comic shops, and I'd like to see more indie producers produce these kind of comics and see them find an audience. Now, if you want to see me make more comic related videos, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my comics like Esteem No Good Deed, you can find it on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want, and my upcoming comic John Haynes at Death's Door will be coming soon. So I'm hoping you guys put in a pledge when I launch the Kickstarter. Until then, you can pick up many of my prose fiction books like the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today.